the planet Earth.
Some call me nature.
I am very passionate about the planet
Earth.
A living, breathing planet capable of sustaining whatever life forms we see fit to deposit on it.
Spock, judging by the pollution content of the atmosphere, I believe we have arrived.
It's the planet stupid.
No. It's the planet stupid.
Our guide for It's the Planet Stupid, Belinda Weymouth. Hi, Belinda.
Good morning. Or no, afternoon, actually.
You heard us talking about that EPA case.
Yes, singing my tune, you guys.
Huge, just a huge, huge case. And as I say, I think it's just part of this Supreme Court agenda to unleash corporate polluters. But what would you like to focus on? I assume maybe you want to say something about that, but...
Well, I think you guys really
pretty much covered it.
Yeah. But the thing is, I did want to talk to that and what happens when we roll back these really, really important regulations. I mean, these regulations aren't there for nothing. They're there to protect us, to protect our health. And, this thing of letting, a neighbor completely pollute the commons and the airspace of another neighbor or the waterways. What the Supreme Court is doing is just an extension of what Trump did when he was in office. During his, 1,500, it's not quite 1,500 days, but he rolled back at a speed unprecedented in US history as many environmental, he dismantled them, eliminated them, tried to get rid of them, all these controls. And, interestingly, what happened was Biden, when he came in, did roll back these rollbacks of Trump's. And what a lot of experts say is the biggest thing that Trump's 4 years in office did was really stop us moving forward on what we needed to do as far as the green and clean energy transition, is concerned. But the fact is that, when he rolled back the Clean Air Act and said to coal-fired, power plants, you can put your toxic wastewater into the rivers and lakes. There was an effect. And what the Lancet Journal has said is that in 2019, and they hold the Trump administration directly responsible for this, there was a spike in 2019 of asthma, lung cancer, and heart disease. And there were an extra 22,000 deaths that they lay at the door of his presidency. So the fact is when you take away these controls, when you allow these states, if this is what the Supreme Court, which, looks like, as David and, you were both discussing, is, what they're going to do is to, say, hey, pollute away. That is going to cause more deaths and more health problems. And is that really okay? I mean, it just, it isn't. It isn't okay.
Yeah, it really is an agenda item
it's
for
criminal.
them to reduce all regulation on on industry and on corporate pollution. So it's I think it's a tragedy and a crime against the planet and against people who live on the planet. So
yeah. I mean, if all of the Trump rollbacks, they say, had happened, all the environmental ones, the regulations that he wanted to dismantle, if that all happened, we would have been putting up into the atmosphere such a huge additional amount of CO2 emissions. They would have equaled the output of Britain, Germany, and Canada combined. That's, how much our pollution, our, greenhouse gas pollution would have increased. It's insane. And I keep
says,
saying,
hey, Melinda, my brother's a biologist for the Forest Service. And when Trump went in his first day of office, he rolled it back. You couldn't even go online at the EPA or the Forest Service to find any information, he says, on climate change. And about a month later, it all changed, and all those restrictions were lifted. What happened? There might have been. I would just speculate here. It might have been there was a lot of hue and cry about the fact that they dry cleaned all the government sites of any reference to climate change or whatever. So that might have influenced public policy there at the Forest Service. I don't know, but that's just my take on it. But I want to just mention, because you touched on it, and we'll move on. you said the Supreme Court, and once these, once Trump came in, and then these justices came in, you understand these conservative justices, they all come, right? Everybody gets that they all come off of a list of Federalist Society suggestions, and they all come through. They're all underpinned by the Koch brothers. So Koch brothers are oil and polluters, and they want very much for the EPA to go away and for there to be no regulations on this. So all of these justices, all of them come through that list. Trump's a moron. He just stamps go, 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 and he goes to a rally. He just signs it. So the Koch brothers own the policy and administrative aspects of the Trump administration. These are the fruits of that. It's despicable.
Yeah,
So, anyway,
it's
go ahead.
crazy. Well, the Heritage Foundation, it's just been leaked. They've got a 920-page document that is all about, they call it, wokeism, but, they put in wokeism, they call it, it's gender politics, it's abortion rights, it's, any of these climate regulations. They are ready if he, gets back into the White House, which, doesn't happen, fingers crossed. They're ready for all these rollbacks. And I just wanted to bring up another one to talk about what happens when you deregulate. Because, as I was saying last week, I got on my soapbox, and I'm so glad that you and David continued it today, because we just can't afford another 4 years of sort of inaction and then this ridiculous sort of legal fight, to try and roll back things that are there in place, to protect us. Now, one of the things that happened during the Trump administration, this is kind of wild that this was a toxin used in growing grains that actually was outlawed in the US. For the last 50 years, you weren't allowed to use it. It's called chlorquat, and it's used on oats and barley and wheat in other countries. And what it does, it sort of regulates the growth of these crops so that they're easier to harvest. Well, we weren't allowed to use it for 50 years, which is great. You could only use it here for ornamental plants. Well, in 2018, the EPA said, hey, guess what? Trump's EPA, which, he completely gutted the EPA. He demoralized the scientists who work there. They're still, I don't think, not back up to, to full strength after, the dismantling job that he did, there. But yes, so now we have these oats in the US that have chlorquat in them because we're allowed to import them. The EPA said, yes, you can. And then the company that manufactures this, basically it's a, toxin to human beings, said, we want you to, increase the amount that's allowable, in our products. And then they've also petitioned to say, hey, we want to sell, this for use on crops in the US. That has not happened yet. But just with the importing of the, these oats and grains from other countries, the levels in the US population have gone up. Now, we don't know exactly what the effects are going to be in these low doses. What we do know is that low doses for animals in labs, it reduces their growth, it inhibits their fertility. So why would we be signing up to say, hey, yeah, bring it on. We want to do that to us. And the crazy thing about all of these chemicals that, we are ingesting is they may be at low doses, but what is the synergistic, when all these chemicals, these toxins get together in our bodies, what do they do once they all start interacting? Georgetown University just put out their research, what 5 decades of pesticides have done to sperm health in the US and how, that has gone down. And we know that men who live in rural areas have a lower sperm count than men who live in urban areas because of what is put on crops. And we know these things are bad. They just did a test in Indiana, and this was on people who were pregnant, and they found this, that 70% of them had this herbicide in them, dicamba, and dicamba is linked to cancer. Roundup, which we use, glyphosate, that inhibits our gives us liver inflammation. It is bad for our DNA. I'm someone who just came through a cancer that is linked to benzene, which is linked
to gas stoves. You've frozen on us for a second here. I don't know what's happened, but benzene is linked to gas stoves. Benzene is linked to a number of other discharges that would probably be found around most households. Go ahead, Belinda. Yeah, you just froze for a second.
Okay. But that caused my cytogenetics to or my plasma to change. And obviously we can't say yes, I was I was too close to the tailpipe.
Yeah, but environmental pollutants didn't help you, is the point.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. Like, what changed my cytogenetics? What made my plasma go nuts? And we need these regulations. We can't be at the sort of this moment in time when we're going to say, hey, yes, we'll roll them back, because the fact is we already know we're living with too many pollutants. So we need to be getting more enforcements and more regulations rather than going in the opposite direction. So it's really horrifying, to watch what's happening, in the Supreme Court. And just also when, you get an administration that doesn't believe in environmental regulations, how quickly that affects your population. If by 2019 we had this huge spike in asthma and lung cancer and heart disease, and an extra 22,000 Americans died because of that.
I love that you make that point. It happens quickly. It happens quickly. I mean, if you pee in your own pond enough, it quickly toxifies that pond, and that's exactly what happened under the Trump administration. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, no, exactly. And the thing is, it's also the same in the opposite direction. When you enact regulations to protect and you put those in place, they have a very quick effect. So this is the thing.
That's the positive of it. I like that you mentioned the positive. That's great. So if we can look, we're running out of time, but I wanted to ask you just touch on this plastics thing, because it's kind of wild. Because we all think, and there's every kind of indication from the plastics industry, oh, this is recyclable, this is going to be, Please quickly touch on it, and then I've got to move on. I'm sorry. I mean, we got to wrap up, but I'm sorry we started late. Go ahead.
Yeah. So the thing with what the plastics industry, who are just an arm of the fossil fuels, because that's where plastic comes from, it comes from oil. So they're doing, they've done with plastics what they did with, the burning of oil. They knew decades ago that it was changing, the chemistry of the atmosphere. It was going to heat it up. It was going to be bad for us. They talk about, they knew, 30 years ago about plastics. It was earlier than that. We knew back in that they were having conferences about ocean health in 1969, 1970, where there was a young scientist, his name is eluding me right now, but he was saying, look, plastic is ending up in the ocean. It doesn't biodegrade, it photodegrades, meaning in the presence of sunlight, it just breaks into tiny pieces, which is what you see in the ocean, all these little fragments. And the oil industry were like, well, we want to make plastic because it makes us lots of money, and so we will obfuscate the negatives of it. And hey, let's put, and this is a drum I beat often on the show, let's recycling. Let's put all the responsibility on the consumer and municipalities to deal with the waste from our product. And we've known for decades that recycling didn't work. I mean, way before China said no more foreign garbage. I mean, when they did that, it really shone this light on how sort of egregious what our model was, to send all these plastics, to another country, all our trash, and say, hey, you deal with it. And the stories about, rural parts of China that were quite beautiful being turned into these dystopian wastelands with, people with these mounds of foreign garbage. I mean, workers would hold an item, because, everything recycles differently depending on what its composition is, and they would hold a lighter to them and burn them to smell them, to see what kind of plastic it was and know which pile to throw it in. Well, then they're just breathing in, the most, toxic, worst carcinogen, a dioxin, which is what happens when you burn plastic, just breathing it right in. And it's obviously not surprising that this is what the fossil fuel, companies did. I mean, do you remember the commercial with the crying Indian about,
Oh yeah,
pollution?
that was many years ago, but yeah, of course.
Yeah. Well, that was completely fabricated, by Unilever and all the companies that were, making all these plastics, and they made it us. It's people.
Well, wait a minute,
pollute.
hang on a second. Wasn't the crying Indian though crying about pollution, or what was the crying Indian
Yeah.
crying about?
He's crying about pollution and what the message is of that
Yeah.
commercial. And I can send you that I'll put it on Twitter, the article about what all the the companies behind the pollution did to make
Right.
us believe that it was our problem, that we were the polluters, because the upshot of that commercial is people pollute, we do it, we're the bad ones.
Right.
And the Indian was crying about us and about how terrible we are, walking along beside a freeway where there
Well,
was
that's what I thought
trash
he
everywhere.
was. That's why I felt guilty. Was that but I
But-
couldn't
but
remember.
what-
I remember the crying Indian. I can't remember what he was. I know he was crying about the environment, but I can't
Yeah.
remember what the advertisement was for.
No, it was us. It was
Yeah.
the
Stop
people are the
polluting.
polluters,
Yeah.
that we were putting it out
There he
there.
is.
Yeah.
I love that
yes.
guy.
Yeah, exactly. He's Italian, actually, that actor.
Oh,
What?
Yeah. There's a whole story about it, but I'll find the article because it's really unbelievable. And when you hear about what they cooked up in these back rooms, I mean, it's like when you hear that article that came out last week about the plastic pollution, that all these CEOs of these plastic companies, they knew that recycling didn't work. They
Sure.
knew it was bogus, but it was just a way that they could keep making products, keep poisoning the planet and us. It's that thing, the many get poisoned while the few get super
Well,
rich, and
the
that's what they
Vinyl
wanted to do.
Institute, the Society of Plastics Industry. I mean, it goes on and on and on.
Yeah, the American
Eastman
Chemical,
Industry.
yeah.
And so on. I've got to wrap up. I love that you're here. We'll have more time next time. I thought you wouldn't mind the fact that we had a prolonged conversation with David Katz about the EPA. So at least there's that.
It's so important that people realize, what is happening and how dangerous it is. And the biggest thing I think Biden could do, I mean, if he did expand the Supreme Court, man, would that bring in his young voters? They would be so happy. Gen Z, millennials, that would really speak
Democrats
to those
have
voters.
got to learn.
Yeah.
You got to lean in. So
Yeah.
She's Belinda Weymouth, Waymouth, for those who can't see it, who might just be listening. Appreciate you being here, and we'll see you next week, Belinda. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
That's It's the Planet Stupid for today.
More
It's the planet stupid. No, it's the planet stupid.
next time, only on The Mark Thompson Show.
Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.